This is Tom Hoskins for Mining Journal. I'm here with Ignacio Salazar, who's Managing Director and CEO of Highfield Resources, which is an ASX-listed potash company focusing on the construction of its flagship MUGA project in northeast Spain. Hi, Ignacio. How's it going?
Hi, very well, very well. Nice to be here.
Yes, good to see you again. So maybe for some of our viewers who are less familiar with potash as a commodity, you could just start with an introduction to potash, why, what it is, why it's important. Yeah, let's start with that, please.
Tom, you are right. I mean, not so well known as obviously in the mining industry, but very critical globally. I mean, it's one of the key fertilizers. It's the famous NPK, nitrogen, phosphate, potassium. That I mean, that is in charge of half of the global production. All our crops globally depend heavily on mineral fertilizers. No, and potash is a very key ingredient. So in terms of food security and feeding the planet, well, fertilizers are an absolute must in the industry and for the planet.
And maybe tell us a little bit about the different types of potash. Can get a little bit confusing, so we don't want
Yeah,
to
yeah.
everyone. Just the
No,
basic two types.
absolutely, and especially when in the Australian market, probably SOP companies is two main. There are others, but two main types of potash: MOP, muriate of potash, and SOP, sulfate of potash. The MOP, a lot bigger market, is more targeting typical crops. I mean, is when some crops are sensitive to chloride that you have to go with the SOP. So it's more of a niche, smaller market. But in our case, our project, our markets, everything we will be discussing is about MOP and probably not as well known as SOP in Australia, as I said, but very important globally.
Okay, yeah. I mean, it's the bigger market, as you say, but maybe give us a bit of context about just how big it is. Who are the main players, main suppliers? Where are the customers? Yeah, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
So MOP is 70 million tons of MOP globally. I mean, compared to SOP, by the way, seven. So it's 10 times MOP, the sort of the size of SOP. But talking about MOP, the biggest producers globally are number one, Canada, number two, Russia and Belarus. Russia and Belarus pretty similar. These three cover 30, 20, 20%, so 70%, only these three countries of the global production. And the next ones are Germany, China, Israel. So as you can see, countries with, and the six of them, you are getting above 80% of global market. So obviously, countries with issues from a geopolitical point of view. So, I mean, another element important in potash, in MOP, in this thematic of food security is as well security of supply. No? And in our case, obviously very important. But those are the main producers. Well, almost by default, the rest of the regions are big demand and not much supply. Europe, the one more relevant for us, 7 million, so 10% of the global market of demand. Half of that is produced internally in Europe. The rest relies of imports. Used to be Russia and Belarus mainly, not so much anymore. And also Brazil is in a big deficit of potash, around as well more between 8 to 10 million tons are demanded from Brazil. So very much agricultural farming regions are the ones that use most of the potash, and the supply comes from these few countries.
Okay, and I mean, as a prospective producer in Spain, you're a bit of an outlier, as you say. The main producers being Canada, Belarus. There's not very much production in Europe. So maybe tell us a little bit how you fit in and what opportunity you have there as a producer in Europe.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So very much is absolutely key in this project is the location in the middle of the European market, obviously south of Spain, very not only in Europe but very intensive agricultural region, and us being north of Spain, south of France, 500 kilometers, 400, 500 kilometers from the mine we have is all agricultural regions. that will be demanded practically half of our production, even from that, which is trucking distance. So I would say, very relatively small project. We will be producing phase one 500,000, and then with the next phase up to 1 million out of the 7 million in Europe. Just to put it in context, 3.5 of imports or deficit in Europe, maybe another figure to keep in mind, or 70 million in the global market. So not a major disruption we will be, but I think we will be a very important contributor to mainly Europe, obviously, where there is that gap. Potentially Brazil, we also have a very direct access to especially the port of Bilbao, and then a quicker access to Brazil compared to anybody coming from the middle of Canada and trucking 2,000 kilometers or the middle of Russia to get to the port and then go back to Brazil. So extremely well positioned with that market, and there is where this asset is making the big difference.
Okay, and I mean, obviously that's a big advantage for you. Can you talk a little bit about some other competitive advantages of the project?
That is indeed the most important competitive advantage, is the location. In such a, bear in mind the sort of product is high volume. Potash, every ton is 400-500 euros per ton. So you need to move a lot of tons, and it's very important to be close to the market and to the customer for many reasons. In addition to that, and compare again, if we compare ourselves to obviously the leaders in the market in Russia or in Canada, it is the fact that we are very much surrounded by infrastructure in the north of Spain, a lot of funds from the European Union at the time, just to connect Spain to the rest of Europe. So we will be investing practically in no infrastructure or outside the mine, because motorways, rail tracks, electricity stations, we are lucky to be relatively close to ports, less than 200 kilometers from the mine. And so that is very important, that for this high volume as well, infrastructure is outside the mine is already there. And the last one is, compared to many of these projects that tend to be very deep, 1,000 meters or deeper, then the sort of geology that is in this environment of potash mines means that typically you have an aquifer on top of the mineralization. Our deposit is a lot more closer to surface. The aquifer is no longer there. So we will be able to access the mine with two ramps, two declines, rather than what the other mines typically have to do, is with an aquifer to build a shaft, very expensive, very inefficient, compared to accessing the mine with ramps. So that is a very big one. So close to the market, all infrastructure in place, and then very easy access to the mine, and a lot more efficient to build and to operate going forward.
Great. Okay, thank you, Ignacio. Well, I think that pretty much concludes our video for today. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Tom. That was my pleasure.
Great. Thanks, Ignacio. And we'll see you again next time. Goodbye.
Cheers. Thanks a lot.